And we're live. What's up, everybody? We're back with the A2B series, and I know it looks much different than how we usually do the A2B series. We're usually in the studio, but Shalik and I, primarily me, made an executive decision to switch it up and do revenue bites in the studio and A2B series over the computer so we can get more guests on. And today's guest, we've been meaning to have him on for almost 2 years now since we first met him at a metadata party. Like, what was it for? Was it for winter? I forget what it was for. It was for one of these SaaS events.
It wasn't for winter. I forgot what it was for. You can tell us though.
It was partially metadata hosted with a couple different hosts, but one of those Austin marketing events, one of many. But I'm glad to be on. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, but I'm gonna let him give his story. But I do want to let you know a little about who he is. I mean, this guy is goated in the AE space. But he's currently he's an account manager at a company called Cube. So ladies and gentlemen, it's been years in the making, but we have Emmanuel. Some call him Manny. I call him Mega Money Manny. But we have Emmanuel Morgan on the podcast.
Sweet. I like the nickname. I need it to stick. But yeah, it's good to be on. I've got a background in a few different things, but been in the B2B SaaS space for a few years now. Started in logistics, but then transitioned over after a couple initial roles, and I've been on the new business side of things, so new business sales, and now running some account management for Cube. So been on both sides of the fence, seen what good sales looks like, and also seen what bad sales looks like, and then seen what it takes to retain clients, which is just seems to be the pressing component of growing B2B SaaS companies, especially with such turmoil in the industry right now. So happy to elaborate on anything I can and answer a few questions.
Yeah, of course. I mean, when we were talking about what the topic was, you came with excitement and passion to talk about retention. So, and I didn't ask why, so I want to ask here so you can answer authentically. Why did you choose the topic of retention?
Yeah, I think I'll start with perspective being I am at a growth company, basically, Series B, B2B SaaS company, and the last company I was at, same thing, Series B, B2B SaaS company. And a lot of folks in that same position are not doing great. And honestly, the biggest reason is they're not retaining their customers. So there's a few different reasons why I think that is. But one thing that we've been really harping on over my current company is that best way to grow your business is retaining good customers. So there's a lot of aspects to being able to do that. One is making sure that the customers that you're bringing in are good fits. So that's kind of on the new business side of things, and obviously the marketing side of things. But new business sales will be new business sales, and basically positioning your product and making your product be something that's really mission critical is key in making sure that your customers stay on. And there's such a big difference in need to have and want to have. And maybe 2 to 3 years ago, companies were keeping things on that they didn't use as much, and now it's like ultra cost cutting. So it's a lot of folks cutting things that, even though a tool might save them a lot of time, they just don't have the money for it. So that's the background that I'll come with, and happy to elaborate on any of that.
Yeah, I heard you emphasize good when you were talking about retaining good customers.
Yes.
And well, we've had stories with this before, but for you, how would you describe good customer? Like, what metrics are you looking at? Is it sentiment analysis? Like, what are these pillars or criteria that you're looking at that you're making a decision that this is a good customer?
Yeah. I had an old sales leader at Metadata basically lay out the fact that you are primarily winning renewal within the first 90 days of a customer coming on board. So even though your contract may be a 12 or 24, 36 month agreement, you really have to have adoption from the beginning. And there are outliers to that. Obviously, turnover at your customer is big, but if you don't have someone adopting your product or your tool within the first 2-3 months, you have really lost them, because there's a good chance that they're doing things the old way, and oftentimes folks just want to do things that they're accustomed to and not give in to doing something different. So that's really big. I think adoption would be the first answer there. Secondly, I was in new business sales, so I was probably guilty of this at one point or another, but a lot of people just aren't good fits. So they're either missold or they're given a pipe dream that the customer success team cannot follow through on. And that's a huge reason why people churn. People feel like if they were missold or misguided, they're gonna pivot away from whatever they were misguided on. So that's a big one. You see some companies turning away prospects because they say, like in marketing, for example, you're only spending $10K a month on paid ads. Honestly, you don't need a tool like ours. I'd love to sell it to you, but you're really not going to see the ROI unless you have 3x that budget. So making sure that you're bringing in the right customers is healthy for the business long term. Obviously, short term, sales folks want to bring in customers. They get paid on that, right? So making sure that the folks that you're bringing in will see the value and see the value for months to come is crucial.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because we're of the school of thought where when you say go-to-market team, everybody needs to be involved, because what we've seen many times is that marketing has a different ICP, sales has a different ICP, CS has a different ICP, and they're all having a mixed message to who the ICP is, and that's why there's a lot of friction and disagreement amongst them. And the golden example of what we've seen is there was a company that we were working with, and we were bringing in said ICP, and they were turning into pipeline opportunity. And then later down the line, we talked to CS, and CS was like, well, this isn't our ICP because they, out of the segments that we have, they have the highest churn. I'm like, well, that would have been great to know beforehand. Now we were selling these. For them, it was a smaller customers because they wanted to move up market, but they didn't make that known. And so these customers were churning, and we were like 3 months in. We're thinking we're killing it with that segment. It's like, well, yeah, you're bringing us opportunity, but they have a high churn. They're not retaining as much. And it's like, well, this is some of the data and information where everybody needs to be at the table speaking about it, and not just marketing. There doesn't just need to be a marketing and sales agreement on what a lead is, but CS honestly should have most of the say, because they get to see them from customer onward to see if they are successful or not. And then you can obviously use that data and information to feed marketing and feed sales the messaging that they need to get more customers who actually retain long term. So yeah, we've seen it ourselves with people bringing in prospects because everybody has a different definition of what ICP is.
Yeah, and I think the companies that are most successful and are successful right now, even in a tough environment, are folks that have marketing as basically the bridge between sales and CS. If you talk to sales folks, their ICP is anyone with a DocuSign account, and if you talk to CS folks, they're measured on something totally different. So making sure that you have the right leads is really key. And I think a huge component to that is doing analysis on the back end for marketing. And maybe that takes a while. If you got annual or 2-year contracts, like maybe it takes a couple of years to run that analysis, but you'll figure out which industries are a good fit for you, company size, which personas you work with. But yeah, I think that's another reason marketing is so crucial in the B2B SaaS space is because it really dictates which customers are going to be good and which ones will flame out and end up churning.
So at what point does the product team play a role as far as the retention side of things? Because like you said, everything could be good from marketing, sales, all the way down to CS as far as a lead. But then sometimes people may churn, I guess, because the product is just not good enough. So how do you guys deal with that?
Yeah, it's a great question. That all depends, really, in my opinion, on how big your company is and how solidified your product is in a space. Like Slack, for example, yeah, they're making product updates, but you know what Slack does. You're either keeping it or not. It could be a cost thing. But for folks like my company and some of the more growth stage B2B SaaS folks, it's really about getting customer feedback and prospect feedback. Like, hey, you decided not to move forward with us. Can you let us know like what enhancements to our product can we make? And then keeping documentation of that. I think that sounds really elementary, but you'd probably be surprised how many folks that you guys have seen it have been given product feedback and really don't implement it. So if you hear something that keeps coming up, there's a good chance that you're missing out on other prospects because you're not actually iterating on your product based off of what your ICP wants. So I think that's really big.
So have you seen I guess what do you think what would you consider the best practices, right? So let's say you're a Series A, Series B company. What sample size do you think is too small to even run a good analysis on churn?
Yeah. I would say if you've got less than 10 customers in one industry and you've got a ton of different reasons for churn, probably have too small of a sample size to really dictate what's going to be successful going forward. All these folks are running churn analysis, but contact turnover is a big example of why folks end up not renewing, and that's tough to dictate, especially in the marketing space. Like, so many marketing teams are just having turnover like crazy, and that's something that you can run analysis on, but someone leaves, they're just not going to renew. But you got even 10 to 15 customers that are in the same industry, about the same company size, and you've got some parallels on why a few of them are leaving. I think even that is substantial enough to really dig into why maybe they weren't a good fit. And then avoiding folks like that in the future. It sucks to not bring in new business sales, but long term, bringing in those folks and then having them churn is not good for the business.
Absolutely. We wanted to make this format collaborative. So before we continue grilling you with questions, we want to see if you had any questions from us on our perspective of retention as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my first question would just be, from your work with folks, what is one thing that you've gotten as a piece of feedback on? Hey, we told you initially we needed these type of leads, right? Do you guys ever get feedback on, hey, we initially said we needed this persona in this industry at this company size, and our sales team has really vetted out all of those folks. We need you guys to iterate and come up with a totally different strategy to target someone else. Like, has that happened with you guys? And maybe elaborate on a time that has come up.
You want to take that one? Yeah, of course we run into that. I mean, it happens more often than you think, especially with those going into growth stage, like Series A Series B, like they're especially if they haven't hit product market fit, it's always shifting. The goalpost is always shifting. And when it comes to shifting segments or shifting ICPs, it's not as difficult for us because there's just like this foundational understanding of no matter the segment, no matter the customer, like if you can just get to the point where you understand how the messaging impacts their day to day and getting down to that fundamental thing, marketing to them is not that hard. I think they just run into this thing where, okay, we initially thought it was this segment, and now they think it's this massive switch. Like we have to go through this massive brainstorming thing. Let's know, well, we got signals from them that something's working. Let's figure out the segment that's actually working. Let's like refine the attributes. That's really all you're really changing is the attributes, and then the attributes will feed the messaging. The messaging will feed the creator will obviously do the distribution. So when companies ask us to pivot on their ICP, one, we want to make sure that it's an educated decision. So where's the data to back that? And so we're usually with them looking at 4 key metrics to kind of verify if it makes sense. And that's obviously lifetime value, CAC, sales cycle, and what's the fourth one? And retention, of course. And so we're looking at all of those, not in a silo, but kind of like putting them together, like what makes sense. And especially if they have multiple segments, then it's an easy move. So if you have 3 segments, well, let's see who has the best blend of these 4 metrics, and that's probably who we're going to go after. And we put less attention or no attention at all to the other 2. So it's not that difficult of a pivot for us. And people make it seem like it's such a big pivot, like the whole company has a shift. Well, it's no. It's only one or 2 things. It's either wrong product, the product isn't fitting the market, or you're just going after the wrong segment. It's one of those 2 things, and it's been done and documented a million times with other SaaS companies. So you're not reinventing the wheel of having to go out there in another segment. Like there's a paper trail of ways to do it. So it's not that difficult to do it.
Yeah. Obviously, like usually with companies, I think, especially with like later stage, it's not really like an ICP issue. Like if you're doing 20 million in revenue, you know who your ICP is. I think we just make it more efficient. Because like when you get to that level, right, Isaiah, like it's more so like exclusion or like the proper targeting than it is like, okay, like we have a whole different ICP, or because it's like we'll see a lot of times like you're trying to target somebody with the wrong ad, and like you're not paying attention to the buyer's journey at all. Like you're trying to target a decision maker with like a social proof ad, and it's like they have never seen your product before, and so I think it's little things like that I think is made more efficient. And because really it's about expectation versus reality. Like cause people like when you run an ad, or like when you have this ICP, you expect them to have these certain criteria. Or like if you're going for a company, you may think that like say their CFO is the decision maker, when like that's the expectation, but the reality is it's the COO, or it's the Isaiah, we've seen it before, like the head of people, or the chief people officer, like the CPO, right? And so you have people, again, expectation versus reality, where you think it's one thing, and then when you actually go out into the market, you're running ads, and you're getting this data back, you're actually realizing what you thought it was, it's not really what it is. And so you make small changes like that. I think that, like Isaiah said, people think are these huge changes, and they feel like they have to change up the entire company, when the reality is just a lot of small exclusions that happen in proper target.
Yeah, and I'll give you an example of honestly probably what you guys are already doing for folks. But my company right now targets FP&A team. So any sort of financial planning and analysis individuals at a B2B company, for the most part, they're interested in Cube. What that looks like is totally different, and for us specifically, the big variable is company size. If a company is 50 people, yeah, we're talking to their CFO. I mean, he's part of the demo process. He's probably part of the implementation, as much as that is not what he wants to do. He just wants to make sure that he's as much of a part of that as possible. That's lever A. Lever B is the 750 person company who, although they're growing and their CFO does touch a lot of parts of the business, he's not using that tool. So he doesn't care about the evaluation. He, of course, wants to know that the implementation is going well. He's not in those calls. He's probably signing the agreement to begin with, maybe the renewal too, but it's mainly, even down to manager director level, because they're the ones really using the tool. So different company sizes attract different personas. And then at the end of the day, it's really about ROI. So it's really about what your persona cares about, and how you target may need some layered components to get to the right folks based off of all these different variables that go into it.
So so like when it comes to retention and churn, right, on the CS side of things, like what do you guys use to like or like if you could recommend any platforms that people could use, whether they're a small team with 15 and 20, that they can kind of use to like help with churn and maybe monitor, maybe, catch early signals. Because, not every customer when they leave is going to send over a message like, hey, like your product sucks or it costs too much. So if there's any software that you can recommend.
I think it depends on the product you're selling and how many customers you have, but anything that monitors usage, whatever that looks like, for us, we use Gainsight, and that's works really well because we can make inline edits. I can go into an account on Gainsight, see what their usage looks like, and then hit the next tab, put in notes, put in whatever my next steps may be. I can collaborate with the CSM on that, etc. We're also using Gainsight for forecasting purposes. I think we're moving to Clary soon, but at the beginning you have to monitor the usage, and what that looks like is different across the board. But if you were trying to renew someone and their agreement is up in 2 months and, they have little to no usage for the last 4 or 5, even more, you lost that customer. There's no, I can come in and give the best reselling pitch of all time. That customer's not renewing. So, monitoring any sort of product adoption via usage, whatever that looks like, is your best bet, whatever platform you're in. Gainsight has worked well for us. At Metadata, we just use the metadata platform and went in their instance and check things out. So yeah, it looks different for different folks, but also being direct within the first few months. A lot of account managers are guilty of waiting 7-8 months in and asking how it's going. No, you need to do one check in after implementation, probably into first quarter with us check in, a mid-contract check in. That way you can get to the bottom of any issues they're having way before they're up for renewal.
It's crazy that you say that because, Shalik, I don't know if you remember, we seen a post on LinkedIn.
I'll probably listening.
Yeah. This lady blasted this company. I don't remember what company it was. Shalik, you might remember, but
I don't think she actually said the company name.
But yeah, the crazy thing is, it's crazy how people will put customer service, like the actual experience, over the experience with the product, because the duality was, she said the product was amazing, like she loved the product, but the fact that she didn't hear from anybody for 10 months and then her renewal was 2 months away, and then all of a sudden they hit her up, she was like, love the product to death, but this customer service, I'm not renewing. And to me, it was like, whoa. So I'm like, CS really does play a massive role, and not that anyone ever disagreed with that, but now you really see it in action, saying you have this amazing product. She absolutely loves it. She probably would have been a champion, but the fact that you didn't reach out to her for 10 months and then you came with not even any help, you were just saying, hey, you're going to renew, that can kill a great product or a great experience for a customer. I never realized that until I seen that post. And so, like, do you see that very often on your side of things, Manny? Like just like waiting to the last minute and then that.
Waiting until you have 2 months left to renew, and it's like, hey, like, are you going to renew? Well,
Yeah. There's a baseline and a common denominator, right? If your product does not hold enough weight, it doesn't matter how good the customer service is. I mean, that goes for a 100K ACV software, and that goes for, me going down to the restaurant nearby and getting something to eat. So you have to have a good enough product to where it's basically providing enough value for you to stay on. But there's also a level of customer service that is A, expected, and B, makes the customer feel like you're working together with them and an extension of their team, right? So, if you've got someone that your company hasn't talked to for 6 months, they like the product, but X, Y, and Z are hitting them up on the side being like, hey, we know you're a customer of this platform, but here's what we do. They're probably giving a second look to these other folks because, they're feeling wanted and they probably assume that the support elsewhere is better if they haven't gotten any where they currently are. So, yeah, I think it also depends on bandwidth. Teams that are not investing in customer success and account management right now probably hurting a little bit more than others because, with all the customer turnover too, like you got a CFO that's never heard of this tool before in his life. Well, he's going to cut that tool. I mean, he's probably even trying to break the contract ASAP. So staying on top of that is crucial. You do need a good customer success team, but even the greatest customer success team in the world is not going to help with a product that doesn't fit that like minimum threshold of mission critical.
So, staying on that topic, so I read a report from SaaS Capital, the 2023 B2B SaaS retention benchmarks, and one of the interesting things, which is really not interesting at all, because I had this thought anyway, but they were saying how NRR and GRR and all the retention metrics improve the higher the ACV of the product. And so I think the benchmark was ACVs below 25K had like a 90% GRR, and then products over 25K had like a 93%. And so like in my mind, even me being a consumer, my thing is that the advantage I think that those companies with higher ACVs have over those who don't is that the more money I'm paying, the more I feel it, the more I'm willing to make it work. Because it serves, like price serves as an anchor for customers as well. Outside of product, outside of customer experience, it's almost like, especially in B2B SaaS, if you're buying a marketing tool that's like 5-6 figure ACV, it's like my job might be on the line. So like they're much more willing to make it work, even despite a subpar product and even not that much help from CS. And so like, what's your perspective on that? Like, do you think it's the same thing? Like that's in the back of a buyer's mind when they're purchasing like a big ACV SaaS product?
Yeah, because the investment is twofold, right? It's not only, hey, I stuck my head out for, purchasing this tool that was $80K a year. It's also like I took the time to evaluate the tool, undergo the implementation. I need to see this out. That's a really big part of it. I think another lesser important part is that the lower ACV contracts probably have a little bit more of a competitive space. Think about like car insurance, right? Someone was telling me recently, I switch car insurances every 18, 24 months because I keep getting a better deal from XYZ competitor. Like, that's great, but if you are selling a big product that's extremely hard to rip out, chances are if they've adopted from the beginning and their usage is good, they're probably not going to take the time to evaluate other tools in the first place. So you basically boxed out everyone else. I mean, that goes back to the topic of monitoring usage. Like, I've got folks that have been super unresponsive, but I see that they're using. If they're not evaluating other tools now, of course this depends on a lot of things like implementation time, but and their renewals in 2 months, I'm probably forecasting that they are going to renew, because it would be way harder to rip out my software, go evaluate another tool, take another 4 to 6 months to implement it, teach your team how to use this new tool, etc. So a lot of it is just like keeping the status quo, which is why it's so important to bring in the right leads for marketing. You've got a good loyal customer that you're bringing in that fits the EICP. It's really hard for them to rip you out if you're selling something that they really need.
Have you ever seen a company or any companies that like they try to like make it very hard for you to churn, or like making the process complicated? Because like I've seen actually a prime example is, Isaiah, this like Planet Fitness. When I went to cancel my membership, they're like, yeah, like you can cancel it, you just can't cancel it here. You have to transfer it over. And it's like, well, for you to transfer it over, you have to call the Planet Fitness where you used to live, tell them that you're now here, wait 3 business days, and then you can come back up here and cancel. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then 3 days later, it's like, well, I forgot about it. It's like, I might as well just keep paying now,
Yeah. I'm a little bit of an old soul. I don't have Instagram. I had a friend tell me that he tried to deactivate Instagram. He's like, I just need to stop looking at the app. Just like, I'll find myself just looking at it just to look at it. And apparently you cannot deactivate your Instagram account via mobile. So you got to take the time, whip out your computer, type in they make it really difficult for you to do that. I think that's probably less relevant in B2B. But you've got folks that have auto renew clauses. I don't know if you guys have any folks you work with that include auto renew clauses like a default, but basically like, hey, we don't get written notice within 30 to 60 days of the contract end date. You will renew at a 10% increase without even talking about it. Now, some folks are really firm on that. Some are not. And it's just a talking point to get them on a call to commit to another year. But yeah, that's certainly something that people are trying to do, especially now where it's like such a sticking point to retain your clients and do so however possible.
Yeah, because I think companies that benefit from that the most, I think, are like these SaaS companies that like, where companies have to be very ingrained into their software to where it's like, it's very hard for you to leave, to the point, like, for instance, like, I think, like, let's say if HubSpot made it so complicated for you to move to Salesforce, it's like, well, now HubSpot is going to keep a lot of their customers because they don't want to deal with the process of having to move over to Salesforce. I think it's that way with, what is that? I think WordPress. I think WordPress is very similar. Like, it's very hard for you to move from WordPress once you've been in there for so long. And so it's like people just end up staying there because, like, well, this is better than me having to go through a long, drawn out process of having to transfer everything over. So,
yeah, it's also just so easy to stick with what you're accustomed to, right? If I'm a creature of habit, I like going to eat at the same places. And sure, like, yeah, I'll try a new restaurant every now and then, but I'm probably going to stick to what I like and am familiar and know where their location is, etc. That's for, let's say, a $10 burger and fry meal. Now think about that multiplied by X on something that takes way longer to evaluate, way longer to bring in, teach your folks like we were talking about. So, yeah, if you can become as sticky as possible with a customer, it's just really, really hard for them to even give another competitor a look because it's a time commitment too. So, big price tag, big time commitment, a necessary product, that all kind of accumulates into keeping folks.
Yeah, and I seen like you mentioned like, so one of the things like the things you mentioned so far as to like monitor churn and like really analyze it. You mentioned the implementation and usage, right? That was a big one. And then feedback was one as well. So how often should a company get feedback, or like, because there's a lot of companies that wait until somebody actually churns, or like they fill out a form to churn. They're like, well, why are you leaving us? And then they wait until that moment, and then that's when they offer like a nice discount or whatever.
Yeah.
But in reality, I think what we've seen works way better is if, again, like you monitor that usage, and once that usage drops off, that's the time to go and say, hey, like, we noticed that you've been using it less. So like, how do you kind of deal with things like that as far as getting feedback, when to get it, and when is the perfect time, I guess?
Yeah, in my experience, I think being as transparent as possible with folks goes a long way. Like, hey, you guys just purchased our solution 4 months ago. I realized that after implementation, your usage dropped off by 50%. Why is that? Is there anything that we can be doing better? Did we miss the mark when we were selling to you initially? Like, what is the reason that you're not using as much as you were in the beginning? And I found that if you're talking to the right person about that, especially if they're on the buying committee, they will tell you, because they have time, they have money invested into your product. They probably stuck out their neck to get this product on board, etc. But 50% of it is timing, right? You can't wait, like you were saying, Shalik. Can't wait until it's way too late to do that. What is that survey gonna do? We've all gotten the email surveys that's like, or the pop-up that's like, why are you canceling the subscription?
Nope.
Who cares? Like, I don't really, unless it's something I really care about, I'm probably not going to take the time to do that.
Yeah, sorry.
You got to catch it way before. Yeah, way before, or you've lost that person.
And so I'm assuming like what you've seen as far as best practices is like to have something. I'm assuming these things can be automated, right? Like you automate these things, and then like once it's dropped, like usage dropped 30% or whatever, then it's like, is this some type of like automation, or do you guys get like a task like, hey, let's email this person and see like what's going on?
Yeah, our team is good about that. We actually, I was talking to people internally about that today. We have something in our tool that will, or in Gainsight, that will alert us when usage has dropped by X%. You can go in there, set that. You can create a call to action in Gainsight where it's basically like, hey, if so-and-so has dropped usage by 10% or more, send them an email. And that comes to our inbox. So the CSM will be like, all right, I need to reach out to this person, whether it's 2 months into a contract or 22. Thankfully, we're fortunate enough to have that, and not everyone does, right? So a lot of it just depends on your volume of customers, your bandwidth for doing that. That's a place where I think sales can be more involved. 99% of the time, sales will close an opportunity and not worry about that person ever again. I've seen it be really effective when, Joe Schmo AE reaches out to their champion that they built a relationship strong enough that, resulted in a deal. They'll be like, hey, did we live up to what we said we would? Like, where's the feedback on our post-sales team? I think that I could even do a better job of being like, hey, salesperson, can you reach out to them and just gauge their sentiment right now? And also just shows like you're invested in the customer. So not only are they investing in you, but you're taking the time out of your prospecting and new business sales to reach back out to someone who formed a relationship with and actually see if they think they made the right decision. So I think that goes a long way. I think every sales team on earth could do a better job of that. But that also takes a push from the CS team, right? A salesperson is probably not going to think to do that. So all of us on the customer-facing side can do a better job of prompting our sales folks to reach back out and really make sure that their champion that bought is getting good value.
Yeah. So speaking on the topic of usage, I think this might be my last question, but I think it's a really good question. At what point does CS figure, okay, this person's been here for X amount of months. Now it's time for us to get a case study or a testimonial from them. What's your metrics, or what are you looking at for that time frame to know that this person is right and ready for a testimonial? Because most people try to find them at the height of whatever metrics, the height of their usage, the height of their happiness with the purchase. So how do you kind of measure that and know when to go in there and kind of request those type of things?
Yeah, this is not a scientific answer. I think 50% of it is gut feel. CSM is on a call with them. CSMs need to proactively ask that. Account managers can obviously do that as well, but and it can be in exchange for something like, hey, you guys are looking at this new product. We're happy to discount it slightly if you're able to. It's all a give and take. I think a big thing though is syncing with your sales team. Maybe even it's just as simple as looking back at the notes in Salesforce from the close one opportunity on the new business side and seeing if that use case for why they bought matches their usage now and what they're doing. If you see a lot of usage and you see they're doing exactly what they said they wanted to purchase our tool for, that's like bingo. I don't care if you're 3 months into the contract or towards the end, like anything that you voice, we can make collateral out of and build credibility because they're getting exactly what they thought out of it, and that's huge. And case studies are somewhat of a controversial topic because I think some are so long that honestly, like, I'm not reading a PDF of a case study, but this is something that Metadata has done a really good job of, and Mark Huber did a good job of, is something really succinct and just direct, like talking like a human, being like, I bought XYZ for this. This gave me this amount of leads. I'm happy because I honestly saved about, 3 hours out of my day every single day because I was able to do XYZ, and this is why I purchased it for. So delivery and case study is big. I think that's a really roundabout answer to your question, but the simple answer to your question is you need to ask, but you also need to make sure that the reason they're using and their current use case matches why they purchased in the first place.
Yeah, like I've seen. I think the best practice I've seen so far with those are, like, because it's different when it comes to asking for a testimony or just asking for feedback in general. Because, like, I guess, like, for instance, a sales led versus PLG, you're asking for it at two different times. I know, like, PLG is best practice is usually like right after somebody finishes a free trial. Like that, the transition from free trial to paid user is usually when you would ask for that, say like, hey, how have we been or whatever. And then, I believe sales led is more so, again, after implementation, or more so the whatever that value metric is. So, like, for instance, LinkedIn, right? And like, their value metric is leads, right? As soon as a customer gets their first 10 leads or 100 leads, whatever it is for them, that's when they would send you something and say, hey, I think that this is time for a good testimony or to get feedback from, X customer or whatever. So I think it depends on, what kind of structure you have going on.
I totally agree. going back to what we were talking about earlier, I mean, if you've never heard from your CS team that's supposed to be supporting you, and the first time you hear is, hey, you're using a lot. Can I get a case study? I'm trying to get, I get comped on 5 case studies. I actually saw someone do this, not at Keyboard Metadata, but a previous company. Like that is not an incentive for someone to do a case study. It's like, you got to build rapport, and, even on, let's say it's a third call together, but it's like, hey, I got to ask, like, if you're seeing enough value from this, would you be able to participate in a case study? And tell them what's in it for them. Like, the best thing that you can do is, for most folks, I think especially in the marketing space, like, they want to be publicized. So slap your name and your LinkedIn on our company page, like, that might help you get promoted. Your boss might see, like, dang, Charlie whatever was on XYZ site because he got this amount of leads, and, like, they respected him enough to ask him for a testimonial. They respected our brand enough to ask us for a testimonial. I think that goes a long way, like I said, especially in the marketing space.
Yeah, because usually it's like one, like, it's either A or B. Like, either you're a really small company and you can ask for it, and somebody's like, they might just look out for you because, like, they've been using your product since, you've been early off. So they'll be like, I'll give you one. Or like you said, you're a bigger company or a more established company, and then again, they want to be seen on your platform. So I think either one of those two definitely works. But I'll wrap it up with one last question. So we talked about usage, right? So we talked about usage, feedback, and then what would be maybe the third metric that you would give when it comes to retention?
Yeah, it's a good question. And this is not a sexy answer, because it is not in my hands or CSM's hands or even our head of the customer facing department. It's really like state of the customer and their actual company health. I get pissed when my champion at a customer loves our tool. They can't renew because they've only budgeted for this amount and they have to cut us. Those are you ask any good CSM or account manager, like, that's the hardest hit to take because it's so out of our hands. And yeah, it's probably not a good answer because there's not much that you can do about it, but customer health is so big. There's ways to monitor that too. I think, even seeing if a company is hiring. So many people have had hiring freezes. If you got a customer that's hiring, especially if they're hiring a lot, and they're telling you budget is a big reason we can't renew at a 10% increase, that gives me a reason to push back a little bit. So you gotta think outside the box a little bit to figure out what that customer health looks like. But yeah, I would say, let's say the third one is just your customer has to be in good enough of a standing to continue with you. But I think honestly the main thing is, how important is this solution in my day-to-day, and I know there's a phrase for it, but basically the opportunity cost or inverse of that, and like, what does that look like if I rip that out? Like, how much is that going to suck for me?